everybody. Welcome back. My name is Ryan Selvy, and I am your host. This is the Premiere Challenge. Hello to all the challengers that have met with us earlier. This is our third video in this series, and today we're going to be going over color, which is a fun, very flexible thing, more so than a lot of people think within Premiere. So let's go ahead and hop right on in. We have, in previous videos, been going over the editing of creating a tutorial for a recipe, and we have our timeline available right here on the bottom, and it has all of our steps lined up with our recipes, with our ingredients. Then after our ingredients, we get to the fun stuff, which is throwing all the ingredients together. This was all filmed on an iPhone, and as you can see, some of the coloring is a little bit different between some of the shots. Specifically, you can see that the coloring, when we gave time to freeze the pie that we made, which is delicious. This is what it end up making. You can see that the color kind of changes, especially with the white balance. So there's a few different ways that you can go about coloring in Premiere. And the past 2 days we worked in, or the past 2 videos, we worked in assembly and editing. And in the new update for Premiere, you can see that now at the top of the page, there's no longer this overcrowding of tabs where you had all the different workflows and you had too much information at the top. They really have streamlined the entire experience, and you can now go over here and you can see that there is the tabs that you want to see and you want to have, and you can either have them or you can go and you can also make it so they don't pop up. So I have it show workplace tabs just because I like it, but you can switch it to just the labels so you can see where you're at and then manually change it through here. But for my preferences, I like to have it up here where I can go and I can drag it in and out and get around the way that I want. But since we want to work on color today, we're going to go ahead and pop into, I'm going to hop into editing just so you guys see this is where we were yesterday. You can see we have all of our footage down here with all of our bins and our folders. And then up here, we have our effect controls, and this is the timeline, this is the preview panel. But when we go into color, the workspace changes, and you can see that this new Lumetri color bin opens on the side. Now, there is going to be a lot of really interesting imagery here on the screen, which is all UI. I'm going to do my best to walk through. Obviously, color, like anything else, is a very expansive field. There are people who just do coloring for a living. If you watch the Oscars, there's people that just win for color grading. Now, we're going to be doing the very, very tip of the iceberg today, just because there is a lot to cover. But even if you're just editing something small, like a recipe video, there is still place for you to go and just add some flair to your project, whether that's with a mood of temperature or if it's just for consistency, like a white balance. So the first thing I want to do is let's go find one that I know that I really want to change the white balance for. And for me, I think maybe this one needs a little bit more white in it. Food is a tricky thing to shoot because it can very quickly look very unappetizing if you don't have it properly lit or colored or what have you. So once I have this, we're going to go and I'm going to zoom in. This is image 1027. If you want to go ahead and download the same files that I'm working on, just go ahead and head on over to the link that's in the description, and you'll be able to see the pie recipe project and the zip that has all of the assets that I'm working on, and I'd love to see what you're working on as well. But I'm working on 1027.mp4, and we made a proxy out of it, and now we can very easily go through it. We might not want to use the proxy when we're doing coloring, but since the information isn't too intense and too heavy, I think we're going to be fine. So I'm clicking on it, and I'm going to hop into Lumetri Scopes. And Lumetri Scopes is going to provide a graph for us based off of the colors that we have. And I'm going to go ahead and I want to have a RGB parade. We have an RGB parade. And we want to make sure that we can see Here we go. Look at that beautiful color. Now, the way that this works, okay, is left to right on the project is what is being represented in this crazy rainbow of imagery. So this is a little confusing because it has all of our colors in it, but let's go ahead and change the waveform type from RGB to Luma. And still looks kind of crazy, doesn't it? Well, through all this madness, there actually is some sense to it. And you can kind of see also here as I'm scrubbing through, and you can see that in the preview panel, we have the syrup falling on top of the pie. And you can see, you're like, wait a second, that's weird. Whatever is going on right here seems to be mimicking what's happening on screen. And what this screen is telling us is it is showing us the lumosity of what is being presented in the preview panel from left to right. So you can see that this has a black nozzle and the syrup is falling down and it is then taking up its place in the rest of the composition. And as it moves left to right, you can also see it moves left to right in our panel. Now, what this is telling us is all the way on the bottom is going to be completely clipped out black, and all the way up here at 100 is completely clipped out white. For the most part, you're going to not want too much to hit 0 and 100. That is the peak of your information that you have. And when it starts clipping, you lose detail in your shots. So the way that you have it numbered here on the left is 0 to 100, and that is the IRE, which is just people that invented this system. And then on the right, you're going to have 0 to 256, and that's because it's in 8-bit. And that's basically because your monitor only has so much capacity to take a pixel and put it into zeros and ones and say 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, that's black, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, that's white. Everything in between that, you're going to have 256 combinations. I think it's 2 to the 8th power, I think. And that's basically just giving the monitor a number to look at and say, okay, when it's this number, this is the number of lumosity that is available in a picture. So let's go look and see a little bit what it looks like when we start messing with the exposure or the contrast. So we're going to go in, and if we increase our exposure, you see everything starts moving up, because all of this information is kind of starting to get sucked away and straight up to the very top. You see that there's still some stuff down here. We still have our syrup, which is down here towards 0. And you can see it's a little scattered around because we have this information. But for the most part, since we went over here and we went to light and we messed with exposure and we brought it all the way up to 5, everything's all the way up here. That's not a great picture. That's not a great balance. We want our footage to be nice and balanced. We want it to somewhat feel like it's in the middle. Similarly, if you go to contrast and you start to increase it, it's going to split, you see, like this, and it's going to make the highlights more light and the blacks more dark. And so it kind of starts to fade away from the center, and things start to get a little bit closer. You can see right down here that this is even starting to clip entirely black, and we're losing little bits of information that we have in the syrup. On the contrast, because it's contrast, when you bring it all the way to the left, everything kind of starts to just blend towards the middle. This isn't too intense. I think I read somewhere that the go-to is around 40 is what you kind of want to deal with your grays and have that set to normal. And so this is actually kind of still pretty spread out. It looks a little bit like it was shot maybe in log or something and hasn't been treated yet, but in this case, we still don't want that. We still want to just bring that contrast back up. And I feel like you guys are getting the point here, but same thing with shadows. If you use shadows, everything towards the bottom will move and stuff at the top won't move. And same thing with highlights. Things at the top will move, but mostly not the top. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to reset everything. This brings us back to where we were. And that is more or less what the Luma is. By the way, guys, this is a live stream when it was being recorded. A lot of you are going to be watching it in the replay, but I do just want to give a quick shout out to everyone that's here in the live stream. If you guys have any questions about what I'm doing on screen, if I can bring it into my tutorial, I would love to. we've got you guys for like another 20 minutes or so. So please, by any means, if there's anything that there is, just please let me know. Otherwise, just say hey in the comments, and I'll check the comments later, and it'll just be good to know that you guys saw this part. So hi, replayers. So we have that in mind, and a way that you want to approach your color editing is you're gonna want to go and you want to individually adjust all of your layered footage to make sure that it's how you want it to look before you go ahead and add style and color and hue. Because it's, if you think about like a cupcake, and you want to put a bunch of sprinkles on it and you want to put a bunch of stuff on top, you can't ignore that you have to build the constant regular cupcake so that they're all the same in the batch before you go ahead and start adding all that flair. So you want to make sure that everything is synced and similar and you can watch it through and it looks normal. And then on top of that, then we'll add an adjustment layer onto the top of it to add that extra flair. Cupcakes. Thanks for bearing with me. So we have here, we were messing with it. Now I specifically want to do some white balance for it. And I know that this vanilla ice cream was white. So we can go in here in this little eyedropper tool. You can click it. And when you click a white spot, it will make some adjustments for you. Since it's pretty white already, it's actually not adjusting the temperature too much. But in cases of here, where this is no longer white, we can definitely go in here and click the eyedropper tool and say, wait a second, you're supposed to be white. And you can see it radically changes. It changes now, it's kind of too blue almost. And you can see that the temperature over here has been a little adjusted too much because we're looking outside and we're backlit, because that was a really smart thing for me to do. But there's still a lot more that we can do. We can mess with the exposure, but we want to make sure that, look, this is starting to get closer to that clipping, and we don't want that. And so we're already just looking at the luma of this, but if you can go in here and you go to the waveform type and bring back to RGB, it's going to show us all the different types of colors that we have. This is a little confusing, so you might want to go over to your parade, parade up here, and it's going to split it out for you, so then you can really see the breakdown, and you can see exactly what we're seeing right here. You're saying, whoa, there's way too much blue. So we got to find a way that maybe you can bring down the temperature a little bit. And what you're going for is you want everything to be more or less pretty even. And when I adjust this tint, you can see that it also is affecting the type of colors that it makes it bring all closer to the center. And you still want to focus on clipping. There's too much blue here that's going and it's being blown out too much, but that's probably behind me. You can also go in, you can always mask things out if you wanted to. So let's say, like, if I go into my effect controls and I go into my opacity section here and you move it around and you bring up the Lumetri again, you'll see that it adjusts accordingly in the graphs as well. And it'll only show you what is popping up over in your mask, which is kind of a cool little experiment. Helps you understand a little bit more as to what it is trying to tell you. You can still see that it's left to right, that and sometimes you have to click out and click back in for it to update. But you can see that as it moved to the left, everything else moved to the left, and so on and so forth. We're going to delete that mask for us. Another cool thing that I wanted to show you guys is that you can go in and let's say that this is too blue for me and maybe this regular color isn't working out the way that I want it to. I want to just jump in really quickly to a cool area that really helps you isolate the colors. And this is what makes me excited about really excited about doing color in Premiere. I do see that Kevin over on this chat is saying, do you have to do this to every clip? Seems pretty time intensive. Yes, but for the most part, you can go ahead and just like we were looking at yesterday, if you press copy and you go over to here and you go to Control-Alt-E. Oh, oops, not Control. What was it? Control-Shift-E? Oh. Man, I'm getting rusty with my keyframes. But you can go in and you can paste just the attributes. And just remember, if you guys ever forget your keyboard shortcuts, you can always just go to Edit, Keyboard Shortcuts. And here you can always go in and you can paste your Lumetri color so that you taking all your information and you can just apply it to the same thing. You can see though that this right here was taken at a different time because we did this shot one in a different location and before it was frozen. So it was a different time of day actually. So it's the information that you're going to have to do is not going to be the same as it is here. And you can normally speed up your process by shooting in proper color and the proper time and making sure everything's uniform. But in the example of doing 2 different times a day and 2 different locations, I do know that I don't have any other shots that are quite like this, and I can go in and I can copy the attributes if I want to. But otherwise, you can kind of grid off and be like, oh, we shot all these together, and that can be colored together, or what have you. But anyway, back to this area where there's all these colors, which I think is a really cool way to be able to approach it. I just wanted to show you guys some cool stuff that you can do inside of this color panel. And there's creative, which helps you just kind of move your shadows and tints, which is pretty, I think, self-explanatory if you ask me. I think that the coolest thing, though, is curves. And these curves, guys, these curves are, like, even if you don't have anything to edit, you're going to want to open up Premiere just because you kind of want to see what is capable. Basically, you have all these different curves, and they're all these different lines of gradient color. And you have hue versus saturation, hue versus hue, hue versus luma, luma versus saturation, and saturation versus saturation. Now, these graphs work in the way that you go very visual learner, at least I am. And you have, your blue to blue because it's the full spectrum. And if you have the hue versus saturation, I have this selected. Let's say that we have this orange here. And I want to go, you can either eyedrop or I can just kind of eyeball it. And you can add these nodes, okay? And with the nodes, I'm going to add here and here. And I'm going to say all this color from this section to this section, I want to edit. I'm going to click this. And you see as I hold it down, you can then see from the bottom to the top, it has a slider of saturation, which is really cool. You can basically take this node and I can drag it down, and it's going to make all the colors within that node in that range desaturated because as it goes down, it's at 0 saturation. But then as I drag it up and you can see it visualized in this line, I can make my oranges like really vibrant and really orange. And you don't have to do it uniform for everything. I mean, you can add extra nodes and you can like move it up and down. You can move them around. You can take this pink and you can say, I want my purples to be really, really saturated. There's another easy thing that you can do with this too is like, let's say you wanted to do one of those old trendy shots, where you go in and you want to make this like only the oranges kind of visible. You can also drag everything else down. This looks a little funky and janky, but it gives you a good visualization as to like what it is controlling. Next you have, let's see here, hue versus hue, which does very similar mechanics to it. And you can go in and you go to pink, and we'll add some nodes here and here. And you can say this color of pink, you're like, I want to change this pink over to maybe a green. We don't have too much pink in this, so let's find a better image like orange again, just because orange is so present in this peanut butter. So we're gonna go and let's say let's change this all to blue, and we can narrow down the range if we want to. We can widen it a little bit more if we want to. And like I was saying earlier, you can also go in and if you specifically wanted to adjust a single color like this, it's going to do 3 nodes for you. And it's going to put the node in the middle as to where you want to, and then it'll put nodes on the left and right for adjusting accordingly. So then we can move this up and down and we can be confident. Similarly enough, the other two work very similar. Similarly enough. And hue versus luma, that's just going to do the luminosity of the color in question. The click goes up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Same sort of thing. Luma or saturation, this is working with a left to right once again with your darks and your lights. And you can go and you can say that you want the things that are lighter to be more saturated or desaturated, and your darks lighter, saturated. And then at the very end of it too, you also have your saturation versus saturation, and that's your most saturated colors. If they're up here, your least saturated colors. And then you can say like, I want my least saturated things to be a little bit more saturated, and my most saturated to be not as saturated, and then adjust accordingly. And so that can all be done, and that can all be made within an individual. But you can also go in, and this is something that you would do for maybe if you were doing some color grading, or you're doing some things to make everything feel more uniform. You would create an adjustment layer, and when you put an adjustment layer in the timeline on top of everything, you can go and you can apply it to all of these. And this, we would do this hypothetically probably after we went through all of them and color corrected all of them. And you go into adjustment layer. Let's do something radical, like not super radical, but we can go into like creative mode. And let's say that we want to add like a blue, like a shadow tint of blue onto here. You can then see that as you drag across, everything has that blue tint to it, which is really nice. And this can be really helpful, especially like in those moments where you have something that is like overarching over all of your footage. And this can still be cut and moved around as well. So like if you take it off, you can see that it'll pop on. I wouldn't really suggest probably getting too crazy with this, because you want to keep your layers pretty controlled and under categories. If you're going to do this to such a big thing, maybe you would like select them all and you would make a subsequence, and then you could maybe adjust to the subsequence, and then you can add it, because then you want this second layer to mostly be something that's going to just affect absolutely everything rather than individual. But everyone works differently, and it's all up to you. Looking at the chat within both YouTube and Behance, once again, good for being here. Brett says, I find that colors can slightly change when proxies are turned on while editing in Premiere. Do you experience this too? Is there a way around this? I would definitely suggest turning off proxies when you're working with a lot of data with like these really big 4K files. The reason why we kind of left proxies on with this one was just because it was shot on an iPhone. It's for TikTok. And I personally am going to want it to work smoother and work for you guys on stream than for it to like slow down and work with it. But I would definitely go on and I would turn off proxies, even if you then like adjust it and then turn proxies back on to then continue, because all of your changes are going to be updated as you return to using proxies with the same thing, and it's going to export the same way. But just going in and like adding a few frames that can then I think is probably the best way to go forward. Some last things for color is you can also always hop into your effects if you want. Under video effects, there will always be a color correction, and you can play with some more stuff that a lot of them actually kind of are obsolete now. But with tint, I mean, if you hop into tint can still be kind of viewed over here, but this will pop up in your effects panel. You can also go in and adjust your looks, and you can save different looks. You can have customs. So like, let's say you're working on multiple projects and you're building a brand identity. Brand identity and color goes really, really far. Think about all the movies. Like, think about The Matrix and think about how green The Matrix are. Actually, think about anything in the late 90s. I swear. Anything in the late 90s is green for some reason. Music videos, The Matrix, movies, it's green. Like, once you start noticing that like 98 to 2002, everything's green, it's going to drive you nuts. But it just shows the importance, though, of color and the impact on your footage and brand identity. So you might want to go in and under Lumetri color, you might have a look that, could even stick to Matrix green, or it could be to a type of specific camera, and make sure that the cameras kind of all work together. You, of course, always have color wheels, and you can build on stuff like HSL secondary is kind of after you've already affected it and you want to affect something a little bit more. So like you adjusted maybe a hue of all the whites, but then you want to work on top of that hue without having another adjustment layer. You'll go down here into secondary and you click it. And what's really cool is you can use these where you like, this isn't a good one to pick off of, but you can hop over here. I'm using a lot of orange. But let's say that we like select this, and it has the selection in what is visible, but we want to like add more orange to it that it necessarily didn't get. And so if we press the plus button, it will continue to adjust and update accordingly to know that this is the range of colors. You'll see that this got wider. And and this shows you what you have. So I can say, no, we still, like, this needs to be included. And as you continue, you can then click in and make sure that everything, and this isn't how it actually looks. This is just a preview that we can switch on with here, color and gray. And then this is kind of like a gradient out, in and out of colors, like how close or far you want it to be. And then once we have that with our key, because it's keyed and selected, we can then, you know, go in and I can just change this color. And, ooh, make that orange look really pop, you know? So anyway, guys, those are just a few of my color favorites in Premiere. I am interested in seeing how you guys add it to your projects with the recipe. As I said, all the project files are available through the Premiere Challenge. I'd love to see what you make over in the Discord. Tomorrow, or in the next video, we're going to be back and we're going to be going over graphics, which as a motion designer myself, I get excited about because you can do a lot in Premiere that you used to not be able to. The updates have been really great. Thank everyone for being here. I hope this helps. I really encourage you, just go in and play. You're not going to hurt your footage. You can always reset it. Just go and see what you can do and see. That's how I learned. You know, I watch tutorials, but I also just go in and get my hands dirty. It's really fun. So I really am excited to see what you guys do, and thank you for having me, and I will see you guys in the next video. Have a great one. Thank you.